Good evening, school board and community members. I'm here to give a brief report on the EPO, and at the end of the presentation, we're going to show a video highlighting some of the work around culture and climate that the University of Rochester has documented and shared widely across the campus and the community. There were several news clips that were released that were shared with the board in a separate email. I'm going to just show one of those videos tonight. It's really important that we give context to what's happening at East. And what's in front of you is our behavior chart. And you'll see towards the bottom the trend over the last few years in instance of fighting, out of school, in school suspension. And I heard someone earlier mention restorative practice. We are deeply engaged in year 3 of restorative practice. We trained our entire teaching staff and support staff, which includes securities, our teaching assistants and TAs. And it's been an incredible journey that we've taken to give kids an opportunity to have a leveled and equal voice around issues and trying to resolve the root causes that lead kids to disengage in schools and to take advantage of those opportunities that re-engaged many of our students at East. This is just another illustration of that for those in the audience to see that the top line were the years before East, and then the bottom line is where we are currently, and that's a month-by-month tracking of our instance of suspension. And you'll see that we are well below 30 at this time of the year. 30 is too many, but we're making some pretty incredible progress in keeping kids in classes and using our social workers and counselors and psychologists in ways that that focus on the healing process of students who have made poor choices in the past. Another initiative that we have focused on that's been documented widely and researched at East by a few researchers is our attendance initiative. We visited 6 schools throughout New York State, including many down there in New York City, 6 to 10 schools, I believe. And we wanted to find schools that had similar demographics, that were non-select schools, meaning they weren't schools that excluded special ed kids or excluded kids who are learning English for the first time, and they had higher attendance rates. We studied that and created an attendance support team to really go after students grades 6 through 12. And you'll see that our attendance rates for grades 6 through 9 are above 90%, and the last 3 bars, grades 10, 11, and 12, are about 85% or higher. We're really proud of those numbers. We would love to see every bar above 90%. You'll also see a bar that's continuing, and those are the students who have been retained either last year or years prior. These are kids who we're most concerned about for dropouts, and so we have special interventions for them around attendance and academic support throughout the school day, as well as in the evening hours. This is just an illustration of why attendance really matters. And at East, this is the 2013 cohort. These are the kids who graduated this past June and August. And you'll see that when we track attendance, those who attended school 90% or better had a graduation rate of 84% and only a dropout rate of 4%. So attendance does matter. And then for those kids who are in the 80 to 90, who were in the 80 and 89%, you saw graduation rates drop to 68%, but the dropout rates increased to 15. And then the kids who attend less than 80%, the dropouts go up to 70%, and graduation rates go down to 12. And so we continue to track our data in ways to try to find the sweet spot for our intervention. And you'll see that 80 and above is where we have to be. 90 or above is where we want to be. And so we continue to use our data in ways that track progress by kids and looking at trends over time. And so when I say we're excited about grades 6 through 9, attendance being above 90%, it's because it creates the next wave of students coming at East, but also the kids who are in grades 10, 11, and 12, we said those attendance rates are 85% or above. So, and that's why we're confident in predicting our graduation rates being a bit higher over the next few years, because kids are attending school. I also want to give a quick overview of the School 33 partnership and thank Fatma and others on Barb's team for really engaging the community in meaningful ways. You'll see that there was a meeting on November 2nd with Path 4. There was a parent information this past on the 14th, which is I think yesterday. We also had, we're continuing to recruit parents there to make them more informed about the resolution that was passed, and also making sure that families can go out and the 5 or 6 applications at East go out to families the week of December 4th. You'll hear a lot about this initiative within the community. We're using community volunteers, paid community volunteers, to knock on doors and to be very personable about this transition. We think that this pre-K to 12 pipeline is something that the community desperately wants, and they've been fully supportive of that. And it's an opportunity for us to partner in meaningful ways with the district so that we have these initiatives coming together and making sense. And I think that was also spoken Two, at the Path Forward meeting, where parents are really excited about the opportunity to have this pipeline of support. Also at East, for the parents and community, there's upcoming events Sunday rather, is robotics competition. We'll host over 40 schools throughout Monroe County. East is starting to create their robotics team. We'll be in full swing next year. Also, we have student-led conferences with our lower school and recruitment nights on December 7th, and then January 11th is another recruitment night that's just specific for School 33. We invite the board to come out this weekend or to attend some of these events if you so choose. I want to end with the video that was again produced with the University of Rochester, one of their researchers and tech teams, that really highlights some of the transitions that has happened at East. You'll see that we focus on student voice as well as teachers who have been at East well before the EPO, who still remain, and how they've experienced the transition thus far. There's a lot of work to do, but I'm confident that we will be successful moving forward. Thanks, Tom.
Good morning, East Lower School. Today's Thursday, October 5th. Today's a B-Day. My name is Chase Ward, and this is my co-host,
Mr. Crandall.
One of the greatest benefits of East being in partnership with the University of Rochester is that people view this project as a sustainable option. It's a school of kids who are hopeful, kids who demand and deserve a respectful environment. And because of that, community members have been responsive.
Make it a great day or not, East Lower School. The choice is yours.
have a great day, East Lower School.
2 minutes, let's wrap it up.
I actually came into East in October of '89 as a substitute teacher, and I was able to get a long-term position.
What did we say they all had in common at the beginning of the lesson?
I have a great love for East, a lot of connections, a lot of families, a lot of students who I've taught and worked with and continue to work with. So it's a lot of history here.
I graduated from East High School in 2005. I've always been very proud of where I went to school. So it was very exciting for me when I graduated and went to college. I knew that I wanted to be in urban education, and specifically if I could come back here, that would be the dream.
All right, let's go. Everybody have a seat, please.
So my story arc is starting at East High School. I graduated in '71, and I've been teaching for 19 years here now. I love teaching. I love working with the kids, and I love this school. This school is very special to me.
Matter is classified as a mixture if there are different types of particles present.
When you tell people where you work, the first question they ask you is, how are you guys doing? Because the community is concerned about us. They want us to succeed.
I feel a sense of community because this is like our home, kind of. We all work together, and our teachers help us become successful in life, and they try and get us ready for high school and college.
I often get asked a question, how do we know if East is working? There are some early indicators that our students are doing extremely well, and they're responding to this new structure.
You're going to set the stage for the entire audience and the rest of the actors.
Our suspension rate has dropped nearly 85% over 3 years. You look at the rates of fights or minor altercations. The year before we came, that number was close to 230. Within 2 years, it dropped to 68. That's about a 70% drop in fights.
So we're going to think about what do we look like when we are our best self.
When we talk about restorative practices in school, it's about doing things with people as opposed to them. Because once we get to know each other and really learn from each other, the likelihood of conflict is lessened.
Oftentimes, if students have a conflict, we bring them together to circle about it. But that's one example. So we also go into classrooms and we do community building circles and we do celebratory circles. So restorative practice is really about relationship building.
We do circles, which gets us more close to each other. Sometimes we do circles to help us know each other's names, know what culture we are, and how we have similarities and then our differences.
It really is helpful to students to have meaningful relationships with staff that's not necessarily connected to a class.
Our approach to discipline is vastly different than it used to be. A young man had come to one of the staff and said, listen, I have a beef with this kid. We're going to fight. I don't want to fight. Can we sit down and talk about this? That is a change. That is, you can imagine what kind of sea change that is.
Ever since U of R took over, I've seen a big change. Like, there's been less drama. I feel like we're learning more than we used to. And they give us like more options, like career classes. So they give us those options to earn extra credits.
And then where do I find the 24?
The y-axis. All right, on the y-axis, perfect.
We knew from our data that kids who did not move from grades 9 to 10 had about an 80% chance of dropping out before the end of high school. The number of kids who moved from grades 9 to 10, first year was 48%. The second year, that number climbed to 80%. And so when you have 80% of your kids on track, you're better able to predict how they'll succeed 3 years later at that pivotal year and senior year.
When we actually create a system that expects kids to be successful in spite of their circumstances, the trauma they've experienced, they can go on to realize their goals and dreams. You have to raise the bar, not lower it. And that's something that we have to make sure that we're doing consistently.
I had a lot of people telling me the 9th grade year was a very important year. I started thinking about it, plus I got younger siblings. So I know that eventually they'll look up to me, and I don't want them to follow the same path that I did, which is why I changed my life around.
You never really know if you have an impact on a student's life. And some of the ones that come back to see you, you're surprised by because you thought, that's the last kid I would have expected I had an impact on. But those are the moments that make my day.
This project is so ingrained in the fabric of this community that it will sustain itself. It's truly the community's school, and that's what it should be.
Thanks, Tom. So there's a series of videos and research briefs that's been done. That's on the U of R website, rochester.edu, and we continue to expand that. In fact, the president of the university just approved the new Center for Urban Education Success, or CUES, and the purpose of that is to document the transition thus far so we can share that more widely across the city and across the state. And the good, the bad, the ugly, our lessons to learn and things that we should do to change that, but also to see if and how the project is scalable so we can take parts of that and share it as widely as possible. So I encourage you to go look at the email and look at some of the video clips there and some of the data points that's been highlighted. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Nelms? Commissioner Adams?
Thank you for the work. Congratulations on the successes. It looks, I was actually looking at over November suspension data for everyone.
Okay.
And I noticed that there's significant reduction in suspensions for your upper school, but there's notable increase in the lower school. Now, those are mostly short-term in-school suspensions, which is good to see as opposed to long-term expulsions. But could you speak to that? You're talking about decreasing in fighting and more restorative approaches, which is fabulous. What's the picture here with the lower school?
So it's often, for that particular incident, there was one incident that involved multiple kids. So it's not something that's consistent over time. Like if you have 4 kids get into it, then that one incident can result in 4 suspensions, which makes the numbers percent look higher. So we don't have daily fights. We might have an incident where 2 groups of kids get together and push and shove, and that's why there's short-term suspensions. And so that explains that, to be honest with you. I think that's as clear as it could be. We don't have daily incidents. It's rare that you walk the hallways and see a physical altercation.
So it's 36 unduplicated and 43 total incidents in the lower school through November this year. So, and they are essentially all short-term. They are all short-term, and almost the vast majority of them are in school.
Yeah.
So that wasn't one fight. That was.
Well, almost one thing. So there would be some kids. What we don't do is if a kid gets into an issue in the math classroom with a teacher, that kid may be suspended for a math class, but they're not going to be suspended for science or studies, English, and something else. So often you'll see that the number will be higher, but it won't result in loss of instructional time for the day. It may be loss of instructional time for that period. And that's the same process I used when I was in the suburbs as well. Like, well, if a kid is really engaged in science but has a conflict with the teacher in math, to have them miss science for that instant makes no sense. So then we do restore the practice, a circle with that teacher and that student until that kid can re-enter classroom in a way that makes sense. So, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be a trend for the next few months, but we look at that, we identify who those kids are, and those are the kids that we put in a different intervention with the psychologist or social worker. Yeah.
Thanks. And again, I mean, just noting also that it's short-term, and that really is significant, and to know that many of those are actually not just short-term, like 1 or 2 days, under the definition, you know, less than 5 days, but actually maybe even just one period. That's the kind of, you know, questioning and the understanding that we have to have as a board in terms of the range of what this data means, like what a short-term suspension means versus a long-term in school versus out of school, and then seeking these kinds of explanations and dialogue, I think, is really important because it shows that even though there's an increase here, the actual news might be good, and seeing the very significant, like more than half decrease in the upper school numbers, maybe students are getting, they're getting these short, immediate consequences that are in a restorative framework, and then as they get to the upper school, we're seeing a reduction in overall. I mean, that's an optimistic, hopeful view, and I think that might be what we're seeing. So again, thanks.
It's also why it's so important that we partner with School 33, so those students understand the expectations coming in, and it's not a new group of kids every year that takes 2 years to understand how we do things and how we function with sort of practice and how we mediate. If we can continue to have a core of kids coming with the same expectations, you should see a decrease in that over time. That's the intent.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.